Man, we back with another official episode of Mud Deep Presents. Oh my goodness, we are in Flower Mound, Texas. It's been a long time, guys. I know, but I told y'all I was gonna be back. We are with this gentleman, Hunter. Hunter, can you introduce yourself for us, please?
My name is Hunter Salazar, and I am a shamanic practitioner. I'm also Hindu, specifically Shakta. I have my own YouTube channel at Hunter Salazar, and yeah, we're just going to be having a conversation today about spirituality in general, and he's going to throw some questions my way.
I couldn't have said it any better, Hunter. Couldn't have said it any better. So, you said that word. What's my viewers might not be the smartest in the barrel. What is Shakta? What does that mean? What did you say?
So Shakta.
Shakta.
S-H. Shakta is we focus on worshiping Shakti, or the feminine side of God. We have a gynocentric worldview, which means that we view all the different dimensions and worlds and biomes as various wombs. So just wombs upon wombs. And we view that as a better symbol for God than the masculine, just because everything seems like wombs to us. I specifically focus on Ma Kali as my Ishta, or the goddess that I worship, the form of Shakti that I worship. But Shakta in general is just somebody who worships goddesses and worships God through goddesses, basically.
So God is a woman, is what y'all believe in?
Yes.
Okay, that's wonderful, man. I've heard some theories on that. You know what I mean? But we gonna break this down a little bit because as you know, we are in America, we in the West. It's a lot more going on than what we spiritually believe in. But I think all of it ties in together. So that I think this is a really cool conversation that we can have and to start and open a dialogue that way. So the first thing I want to do before we even get into the crazy stuff that's going on in the world a little bit, let's talk about how did you come about your spiritual practice? How did you get into that?
So I was around the age of 6 or 7. I kept on hearing other kids talk about God, and I realized that they were just copying their parents about what they believed and what they thought about, and basically copying their parents' religion. So I went to go ask my parents, but then they were arguing about some stupid like applesauce. So I was like, "There's no way that they know." So I went. So this is like 7-year-old me went online. There was dial-up back then, so you have that weird sound that dial-up makes. And then I looked up the definition of all the different religions. And then Buddhism stuck out to me. It was something, I remember asking myself, the ending of suffering, am I suffering? And I was like, I think that maybe I am. But then I asked my parents to buy me some books on Buddhism. And I started reading a book on Tibetan Buddhism, and that's kind of where it started, but I kind of fell off my path, or seeking in general, until I was probably 18, so there's a big jump. But around the age of 18, I thought I might go to different churches and try to, because I was heavily drinking at the time, and I was like, I need something to I need inspiration away from this. So I was like, okay, churches are easy to go to. So I started going to churches, but then I noticed that the priests and the pastors couldn't answer all of my questions. And I had a lot of questions that they couldn't answer, and even after studying Christianity years later, there's still not as many answers as I found in Hinduism. So that's kind of how I started, but I also got into magic and spells and working with spirits and different gods and goddesses. I got into that around 21, 22. I would say I've been a Shakta before I knew what it even was, I've been Shakta for at least 12 years. Once again, gynocentric worldview, different wombs. It's easier for me to see God as a woman as well, because I was always closer to my mother than my father. So that might also be an influence. But ultimately, Shaktas, we know that ultimately God isn't man or woman. We just find the woman as a better symbol.
Okay, I like that. I like that you just, so you saying that it's not set in stone that she is a woman, but you just, like the same way we reference, and me as a Christian man, I say I'm praying to my father, I'm praying to my mother.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Same reference point.
Perfect. And you made some other points too. So, you know, usually you in Texas too, right? So you know, you don't sound like a good old boy. You sound like your upbringing and your background was completely different than that of a normal Texas youth. So I guess what type of environment did you grow up in that fostered, that allowed you to have that type? It sounds to be very open and open-minded. Would that be safe to say?
Yeah. I would say that I always had a rebellious streak, and I didn't really care what my parents thought. And they didn't strongly try to influence me one way or another. Hell, if they were Christian and they tried to make me Christian, I probably would have become a Satanist. Like I would have gone the complete opposite direction. So maybe it's better that they didn't try to influence me. But they've always been very liberal upbringing.
Yeah.
Not conservative at all. I would say that I used to lean a lot more left than I do now. I've got more conservative as I've gotten older, though that needle has not gone that far. But I've gotten more conservative, I'd say.
Usually what happens when you get older.
Yeah, and I always thought I'd resist it. But I always thought I'd be different.
It just happens.
It just happens, man.
No, that's cool. So, man, it sounds really like trippy, you know, for us that don't know too much about the Hindu stuff. That's from India, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Southern India specifically. So Shaktas do not generally support a caste system. So caste system is further north and more Vedic. So Tantra is Hindu shamanism, and a lot of Shaktas are tantric in the way they think and the way they behave in rituals and stuff. Very more shamanic than structured, like in the north, the Vedic north. So we tend to be anti-caste system, and we tend to not to be an influence in our spiritual culture, like you would find in northern India.
So it sounds like just like Christianity has different sects, Catholicism, Pentecostal, Seventh-day Adventist, that's the same thing with Hinduism.
Yes. I would say, just from researching Hinduism in general, it's so varied. There's an old Hindu saying that if you have two Hindus in a room, there'll be three different opinions. So there's so much variety in spirituality and philosophy.
Yeah.
That it's like a cornucopia of various influence. I mean, there's 41,000 I think different Christian sects. At least I think it's around 41,000. I would say there's probably at least double that in different Hindu types, which is a lot to take in. And honestly, I have more books than I could read in a lifetime, but I just order more and more spiritual books. I studied Christianity as well esoterically, and Jesus didn't make sense to me until I understood Jesus through Paramahansa Yogananda. And he came to the West, but he wrote books on Jesus and reaching God through Jesus. But for Hindus, the ones that do believe Jesus is an avatar, which is God come down, which I think he's an avatar, we just don't think he's the only one. So God came down repeatedly with different messages, at different times for different reasons. But I would say I embrace Jesus Christ as a avatar, just not the avatar. But anybody who's watching, I highly recommend the work of Paramahansa Yogananda. So if you just type in Yoga Ananda, then you'll find a number of books by Self-Realization Fellowship. And yeah, I would recommend anybody who's Christian to read some of those because they're really good and they have an understanding of Jesus that is so deep compared to anything that I've found.
What's his name? Yoga. What's his name?
Yoga and then Ananda. So Paramahansa, I think I could spell that Paramhansa. That's Paramahansa, then Yogananda. I also have, I guess if you specifically want to borrow some books, you can. Not everybody who's watching this can borrow my book. But yeah, I got a bunch of books by him. I highly recommend him. I was always really resistant against Christianity because I'm a big history buff, and learning the history of Christianity kind of turned me against it in a way. Especially how
you talking about all the raping and murdering and killing?
Yeah, and the colonizing and the slavery
and the whitewashing. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and the justifying slavery by using the Bible. I did not like that.
We right back at it. Okay, so Man, we're talking about spirituality. I did have a question for you. I think I wrote this down. How did we get, in your opinion, to this point of having a mental health crisis in the USA? And then when I say mental health crisis, we know these things as schizophrenia, we know these things as bipolarism, we know these things as being a sociopath, narcissism, etc. But on the Eastern side, these things had different names. So coming at it from, I guess, the question I just asked, but from your Eastern research and knowledge, how are these things looked at, and then how do we get to this point, in your opinion?
It's a big question. So I think I have a lot of ground to cover. So some things can be diagnosed, just to begin with. Some things all things can be diagnosed spiritually. I think that they also can be treated spiritually. I think that there are treatments for everything if you're willing to do them. I think that it's difficult to find the people, like the proper shamans that can help you, or the proper spiritualists that can actually help you, because there's so much BS or BS teachers or practitioners out there that to get to the actually good ones is really hard. And I think that is the problem. It's also that with Western religion, when we're talking about Christianity, Judaism, Islam, the Abrahamic religions, there is a distance from the earth and holistic living that I think that we see a problem with in consumerism, but also in the chemicals we're willing to ingest.
Oh man, hold on, you use some big words right there.
Yeah.
So a distance from the earth. What you mean by that?
So the earth is not valued, or at least it doesn't seem to be valued to me and others in the Abrahamic religions. It doesn't seem to be valued. It doesn't seem to be embraced, and it's not seen to be as an extension of God, but as something to be ruled over. Mm-hmm. So how could the earth help us is probably in the subtext of that, because all we need is God, right? But that for us Shakta, it's like, yeah, the earth is part of God. So if for Shaktas, God became everything, God didn't create everything.
He became everything. Okay.
Yeah, so I guess you should direct the next part of it, because there's a whole lot I can go into just in relation to holistic living and how we're far from the earth. But did you have any questions based on what I just said?
No, what you said was good. So I guess we can pick it back off. We're going, I guess to answer my question, Western culture specifically is going against the earth. And so us normal people, so let's just talk about us normal people that have to deal with this stuff, right? Because we all might be indoctrinated into a system, but we're dealing with a system that's ran by a few people. So since we're dealing with that and we got these mental ailments, you saying that we're disconnected from earth, that's why we feel like that?
All the natural knowledge that we have, that we learned, and that we knew from the earth, all that shamanism in essence, has become demonized. So it's not sought. Since it's not sought, since just basic things about the earth, like walking in the soil with bare feet, reoxidizes your blood after a time. Just some basic knowledge like that, or the benefits to mental health that various mantras have. What various mantras do. There's a science to mantras. Sanskrit is one of the only languages that was designed rather than coming about naturally. Rather than evolving, it was designed scientifically by ancient Indians. So various mantras do various things and can help in various ways.
What's a mantra?
It is, how do I define mantra? It's like a prayer, but it's more like an invocation or evocation.
What's an invocation or evocation?
You're manifesting something.
Manifesting.
So you're not communicating, you're manifesting verbally.
Like when they say, if you want to have a bunch of money, act like you already got it, just like that.
There are mantras for that, but you have to say them hundreds of thousands of times, and for them to actually work, there's a certain amount they have to say them, and there's certain ways you have to say them in various rituals. It's all been scientifically categorized in Hinduism, and then there's a puja, there's a ritual for everything. a lot of that is not valued. It was not valued when the British went to India. I do not like what the British did in India, but it was not valued by them. They just saw India as something that needed to be Christianized. So,
Well, what Jesus?
huh?
Well, what Jesus?
What, Jesus?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I said with what Jesus?
Are you talking about white Jesus?
Yeah, the blonde hair, blue eyed. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the blonde hair, blue eyed Jesus.
Yeah.
That
So
Jesus?
that's actually Caesar Borgia.
Yeah.
But
Look, who did it? My bad. I said yeah. I don't know who that is. Who's Caesar Borgia?
he was one of the popes in Italy's son. I think just before the time of the Renaissance in Italy.
He looked kind of gay. I ain't gonna lie to you. Was he gay?
He was probably at least bisexual. But he hired, or no, he didn't hire. He asked his dad, the Pope, to get all depictions of Jesus to look like him, so basically he could get laid more. And that's the picture. That's white Jesus that we have. I don't know what Italian looks like, but some people say he looks Italian. I guess that's more true than what the actual Jesus was. Much browner. He did not look like white Jesus.
So I heard, sir. So I heard.
But yeah, and the crazy thing is that son, Caesar Borgia, he also believed that he was a reincarnation of Mars, pagan god. So he wasn't even really that Christian. So the picture of Jesus we have, it's
Blasphemy.
Yes. And yeah, I feel like so in some African cultures there are certain pictures of black Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
That's way more accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Than
Talking about like them Ethiopian paintings and stuff like
yeah,
that.
Ethiopian church. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're really big into it was the Books of Solomon. Anyway, get sidetracked. But yeah. And I feel like also white people feel like they're attacked when they hear Jesus wasn't white, when they shouldn't feel attacked, because if they knew it was Caesar Borgia, maybe they would still feel attacked. But
you know what? That's a good point, Mr. Hunter. Why do you think white people feel? Why do you think your people feel so attacked about stuff like that?
Yeah.
And when I say your people, you know, there's different sects of everybody. Everybody got. They like to use the word. For those that don't know, behind this camera, I'm an Afro-American man. They like to use the word ratchet for my culture, but all cultures got ratchet. And if we came to America, I think we developed the European culture more than anything.
Yes.
But so why do you think that? Why do you think that?
Why do I think?
Why do you think that modern Western whites are so
sensitive about certain
sensitive about when it comes to blackness? I don't even think certain things blackness.
I feel like a lot of white people, they feel guilty about things like slavery, but they don't want to admit to themselves that they feel guilty.
Is that what it is?
Either that, or they're insecure, or they've lost their cultural roots. I don't think Christianity is the cultural roots of Europeans. I think that, honestly, if you go back far enough, everybody was shamanic. And if you go back far enough,
I agree.
then Shaktas were more prevalent than they are now. There are very few Shaktas now. And then again, Shaktas never invaded anybody or colonized anybody.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they never fought any wars of religion.
You know, so you the shaman, you brought up that point again. You got me thinking about that movie that everybody must have seen by now, Sinners. Great movie. But it got me thinking like that, like Celtic. You got me thinking Celtic shaman circles. You got me thinking paganism, but their own kind of thing with that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like I'm very white, but I still have a connection. So I feel like I still connected to everything in my DNA. I'm 30% Native American, and I'm 10% African. I probably don't look like either one of those things. But when you start getting into shamanism, you start to resonate with certain things, and not everybody resonates with what's in their DNA. Sometimes you resonate with what your soul was before, but some people resonate very much with what's in their actual biological DNA. And I would say that it's a bit of me for both, because with Kali, I feel like I've worshipped her in past lives, that I was a Shakta in past lives, but then also I feel connected to everything that's in my blood as well. So yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point. All right, so we on the topic of how shamanism really, in my opinion, I don't know too much, but in my opinion, left the Western world with the destruction of the native population that was here. Who was here first? You know, there's a big debate on that. We ain't come here to talk about that, though. But, you know, his story is really his story, man. And my question to you that I posed was, how did we get to a point in this country of having a crisis of just like major outbreaks, just kind of like the flu? It's just like, you know, every time I look up and I talk to somebody below the age of 50, there's usually, I say one out of 5 people, there's usually a mental health issue with 1 out of 5 people. So how do you think we got to that point with this recent generation like this?
Part of it's chemicals that are the result of convenience and capitalism.
Chemicals, talk about that. What you mean?
So it's easy to produce certain foods and make them last longer with chemicals. So you can sell more and they last longer, so people tend to buy them. But at the same time, they're not scientifically researched enough to prove that any of these chemicals do not damage us long term, which they do indeed. So like for instance, McDonald's chicken nuggets. There's 40% preservatives, and it's basically 40% chemicals and preservatives. Also things like they mix lettuce with like basically sawdust to make it last longer, stuff like that. And processed wood is not super good for us. Yeah,
I would assume so.
Yeah, but there's a whole lot of chemicals that we're exposed to that we consume that
we're unaware of as well.
That we're unaware of, and that are used for convenience sake. We're also, once again, we're not as connected to the earth, or I feel like shamanism in general, any kind of shamanism, helps you process trauma and helps you psychologically. There is not a deep psychological paradigm or system in the Abrahamic religions. I feel like psychology is a bigger part of shamanism than people, I think, are aware of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree, man. You just said something I got to touch on real quick. So I think the shamanism was intentionally removed out of the Abrahamic religions as it got translated, in my opinion, from what I could see. Because I think we had a sector of like that in the original people who followed the teachings and messages of Christ. They were called the Levites, and they were the shamans of the culture. And I think we not only are undereducated about stuff like that, but yeah, it's completely washed and watered down and wiped down, just like Caesar Bodega as Jesus, or whatever his name was.
Yeah, Borgia. But yeah, so I do think that a lot was removed from the Bible. So it was removed in the Second Conference of Constantinople. For instance, the fact that weirdly enough, we don't have any information in the Bible between Jesus between the ages of 13 and 30. Interestingly enough, in India, there are temples that have scrolls that prove that he went there between that time.
I heard he went.
Yeah, and so there's actually some Hindus there that are still followers of Jesus and that have been following him ever since he went there, like this enclave. But yeah, so I think it was deliberately removed. I think King James also did a terrible disservice.
Wicked man.
Yeah, King James. He hated women, first of all, and he also hated anybody of color. And he specifically left certain things in the Bible and took out others that would support serfdom and slavery. So I think that I align more with the original Christianity than whatever it has become, for sure.
Hey man, I didn't come here understanding it that way, but now that we've spoken this briefly, I can definitely see what you mean, and I can concur with you on that. I even got this point. I just wrote it down just now. It seems like we're still living in King James' world. This is still his. He's reigned for what? How many years now?
Yeah,
400, 500 years.
It's got at least 500.
At least
right?
500. Yeah, at least 500. So that's phenomenal, dude. So let's talk about schizophrenia a little bit more. What has been your own dealings with it? How did you come about it? How did you recognize it within yourself? And what does your practice say about it?
I would say that I would need to meditate at least 2 hours a day in order to not take medication. Also, I would need to do way more shamanic rituals every day, some of which I know, like contact with the earth, like washing your feet in purified water and salt, Simple stuff like that. But I need to do a whole bunch of spiritual activities basically in order to not take medication. I take medication out of convenience, and it's way easier than truly dealing with the problem, if that makes sense.
What is schizophrenia?
It is when your nervous system is overly sensitive to external or internal stimuli. That means that it can all kinds of disorders can come out of schizophrenia. I have major depressive disorder. I have anxiety disorder. I also have insomnia. All of these are related to, also, if I don't sleep enough, then psychosis. All of these are related to schizophrenia and an overly sensitive nervous system. Now, I do think that schizophrenics can sense things that other people cannot. I think that it's incredibly hard to understand or to figure out which it is, though, because an overactive nervous system can produce stimuli that don't exist. At the same time, a very sensitive nervous system can pick up on stimuli that do exist.
So yeah, man, I think we just learned something. You just told me off camera a little bit that Americans have the most zombie dreams out of anywhere in the world. You know, we can talk about Hollywood, we can talk about stuff like that, but I think the point you made was that Americans are against conformity, and we conform all the time. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I'm very anti-capitalism. I would say that capitalism is the opposite of spirituality. It's part of the reason why we have so many mental health problems. But I would say that with zombies, we're constantly driven to consume way more than we need, and that bothers us on a spiritual level. And consumerism and capitalism is not bigger anywhere else than it is in the United States. But it's almost like our subconscious is rebelling against us. So we have zombie nightmares. Like our brains are trying to tell us, or our spirit is trying to tell us, like, something is wrong.
Something is very, very wrong.
Yeah, and they say you stop. This is an old saying. I don't know if it's true, but this is an old, like, spiritualist saying. I don't know how New Age it is, or if it's New Age, but they say when you stop having dreams, your brain and your subconscious has given up trying to give you messages. It's like you're not getting these messages, so I'm just gonna stop letting you remember dreams. Like, you're not listening.
So those of us that are gonna type in the comments, I don't remember my dreams, or I don't have dreams, because I talked to a few girls that I know. They have said that they don't have dreams and stuff like that. So spirit guide sounds like they just kind of stopped talking to them a little bit.
Yeah, it's a possibility. I'm not gonna say it'll be true every time, but it's definitely a possibility.
Nah, some of them females, they definitely don't nobody. They spirit not talking to them. Yeah. They crazy.
Right.
That brings me to another point, man. America is unique in a lot of different ways. America and UK to me are the same in a lot of ways. Just UK is just the old America.
Yeah.
But it's unique in the sense that a lot of these problems. So I asked the question. You didn't. I kind of moved on from it, but how does shamanism view schizophrenia? And
it's called the shaman's disease.
It's called the shaman's disease
by shamans.
Okay.
So
it's a gift or it's a disease? It's a dis-ease.
So I would say it's both. So I would say that it's not fun to have an overactive nervous system.
At all.
Yeah, there's so many downsides. But at the same time, so I feel like I'm more closer to my spiritual path now, because a lot of the problems with schizophrenia, even being medicated, I do not have that I used to have. So like the nightmares, I don't have nearly as much social anxiety. It used to bother me when people would even look at me. Like, schizophrenics naturally it's hard to be looked at. That hasn't been a problem for me recently, but it's almost like it's too intense for us because we can feel somebody's, like, spirit. You know what I mean? So there's downsides. At the same time, you can, if you use it properly, you can actually, like, help a lot of people who can't sense the same things. So I would say that all shamanism is not a monolith, but there's a lot of shamanic cultures that view it as a shaman's disease, and that if you don't use it, it will eventually kill you. But that's why it's called a shaman's disease, because if you don't, the medication is to follow a spiritual path. If you don't follow a spiritual path and actually also try to help people, because shamans are always, part of their path is to try to help people. It's kind of what I try to do with my YouTube channel. I also have helped people spiritually, and I've helped them get rid of ghosts, which is a whole nother series of stories.
Next interview coming up soon.
Right? But I feel like within the last couple years I've stepped onto my path more so than the previous period. And so, yeah, it's how it's used generally in shamanistic cultures is that it's something that it's a power that if you don't use, then it will kill you. But if you use it, it can be beautiful.
That's a great point right there, man. If you don't use it, it'll kill you. That brings me to a lot of different things. Just a lot of thoughts just start running in. Like, if you don't use, me, I was good at basketball, but if I don't practice, that shit is gone when I step back onto the court. This shaman disease, though, this is everything, though. So I want to point you back to something. Do you remember what it felt like to be normal? Before the change happened. So
it started to happen way sooner than it should have. So usually schizophrenia hits around 21, 22. With me, it hit around 15 because I started drinking a bunch around 15. But I would say the social anxiety and the problem communicating with most people, that has always been. I've gotten better in recent years, but early on, that was the big part of it that was affecting me. Later on, around 15 is when all the other stuff came. So as far as like remembering being like a normal person, I don't remember, I would say, because I feel like some of it started happening really early on, and then when everything hit, it was pretty early on as well. So yeah, I don't know what it is to be other than the condition that I'm in.
That's a great point, man. What advice, or if any, or what would you have to say to some of my viewers that are watching this, and they like what you're saying, but it feels like, and you talked about doing magic, but it feels like witchcraft that goes against our religion, that goes against Christ, that goes against everything that we believe in, but we like what you're saying, it sounds good. How does someone like that get involved or open their minds up to what you're talking about, to heal themselves if they're going through something?
So the shamanism that remains in the Bible is something like Thurim and Umim. I think that was the two stones, one black stone, one white stone that was in a bag, and then you would draw it and try to make a decision. That's divination.
Sounds like rune stones too.
Yeah. It sounds a whole lot like runes. So there's a whole lot of stuff with angels in the Bible that is clearly shamanic and clearly tied to what we quote unquote now call magic. I would say, and then a lot of how the Bible is written, where it talks about various beasts and it talks about different battles between different forces. A lot of it is written like a magical tome.
A tome? What's a tome, sir?
It is a book of spirituality and guideline instructions, kind of. So if you read the Bible and you're looking out for those things, a lot of it's magic. I think a lot of people buy into King James dogma about magic, and that has stuck with us ever since.
So you think we're still living in the witch trials of understanding?
Yes. I feel like our understanding is poisoned with dogma and a fear of our natural innate power as human beings. What's
a read that's maybe not too much for somebody like that's trying to be open-minded but is having a hard time, that you would suggest for them to ease it into them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We virgins.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on what path you want to take. So
that's a good point right there, man.
So there's a lot of Norse shamanism it's called Northern shamanism, but I call it Norse because nobody knows what Northern shamanism is. People kind of have an idea what Norse is, you know what I mean? Because shamanic cultures will identify based on where they're at on the planet.
Yeah.
Northern shamanism, Norse shamanism. There's a whole lot in there's a whole lot of books on Odin and Odin's like basically a god of magic, all father kind of thing.
I heard he's just a copy of an African god, but that's a different.
Well, he's kind of a copy of Shiva, but and there's a whole nother. Him and Shiva are very similar. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And see, that's a whole nother area where it's like, are the gods, are they just our interpretations of the gods just different interpretations of singular beings, or are these beings separate? That's something that I think everybody has to come to their own conclusion on that, because it's not super clear on what it is. Like that, yeah. But so I would go for books on white magic, ceremonial magic, anything that's like that. That will not be too much. It won't be too big of a blow. There's also a whole lot of books on angel magic, like a whole lot, and they're directly working with angels from like the Bible. So that I wouldn't consider that as that different from Christianity, I suppose. But yeah, I think looking for those keywords, I think you'll be good. And I can't stress enough how hard it is to get out of a dogma.